Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to babble a little bit as I wait for everybody to log on. We are expecting a large turnout, so I want to give everyone a chance to log in. But this is where a webinar where we're going to talk about the essays that you might have to write for your college applications. So this is especially helpful for high school seniors, you 12th graders, but also younger students, and anyone else is welcome who's interested in this topic. And I will get started in just a minute. I know we have lots of people logging in. Although you're not able to type questions into the chat, you can, if there's something in the chat, like a clickable link, you are welcome to click it and you can click and see whatever's in the chat. I also have Tessa here. She is going to be helping to answer you in the Q&A. So if you do have questions, if you go to the Q&A part, you can ask specific questions that we will do our best to answer. Also, if there's something that Tessa is not able to answer in writing, she will unmute herself and forward that to me so that I can answer it for the group, especially if it's something that might pertain to a lot of people. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Carla Whitaker. I'm from the San Diego and Imperial County's CalSOAP project. CalSOAP stands for the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. We're an outreach organization and we fall under the umbrella of UC San Diego. They're our fiscal agent. So I'm actually part of Enrollment Management Services at UC San Diego. That is who we are. We are at calsoapsandiego.org, and that's where you can find information. Like, for example, we have a senior jumpstart activity on October 1st. We encourage you all to attend, and that's an in-person event. All of our webinars are there. This webinar will also be posted there. Our college fair is posted there. Lots of great stuff on our website. So I do definitely encourage you to check that out. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I have a slide deck and I'll explain what I'll be covering tonight. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. Okay, so one question that we always get at the beginning, and this is of course natural because sometimes people can't stay on the whole time, is can we get a copy of this? And yes, this webinar itself, the actual hour recording, will be posted in the webinar blog section of calsoapsandiego.org starting tomorrow. So you will be able to actually click and view this video, and it will be on our CalSOAP YouTube channel so that you can just kind of check it out anytime. So that, again, that will be starting tomorrow. And also the slide deck that I'm sharing will be there as well, and you'll have access to that in PDF form. So yes, you can get a copy of the slide deck. Yes, we will be posting a copy of the webinar, and that's at calsoapsandiego.org. If you have questions specifically for me and it's something that you don't want to put in a public Q&A tonight, you are also welcome to email me. My email address is kkwhitaker@ucsd.edu. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to be covering tonight is I'm going to give you in-depth coverage of the UC PIQs because there's 8 of them and the students have to choose 4. They're kind of complex. And I know a lot of students are really interested in those UC ones because the UC application is already open. We will also briefly cover the Common App essay prompts. I won't go into as much detail, but I will cover that and I will include that tonight. So that's what we're covering. So personal insight questions. They used to be called personal statements or personal essays, and they kind of changed that to personal insight questions. They want you to think of it more as an answer to a question, the way you would answer it in an interview or speaking orally, and not necessarily a formal essay. This is just the UCs we're talking about now. I will have, along with the prompts, I'll have some quick writes that if there are 12th graders on the call, if you want to actually take this time to type or write some quick responses to these questions and think about things, get your thoughts going, you are welcome to do that as well. But because this is a webinar and we're not able to interact as much, I won't have too much time spent on that. So when is a written response required on what type of application? On the UC application, they give you 8 prompts and you do have to respond to 4. If you're applying to a private college or university, especially if they use the Common App or Common Application, there's, I believe, 7 prompts, but 1 essay that you choose. Sometimes certain colleges might have their own supplemental essays, but generally the common app, the one that's required, is just one. Sometimes things like a scholarship application might ask for an essay. Sometimes a program application like Price Scholars, Upward Bound, something like that. At this time, the CSU is not requiring, they haven't yet, and as of now, they are not yet requiring an essay on their college application. So when I say the CSU, I mean like the California State Universities, such as San Diego State, Cal State San Marcos, etc. Okay, so this is the part that is sometimes tough for a 12th grader, because you're very much in the present moment in 12th grade. You are dealing with senior year, you have homecoming, you have homework, you have classes starting out, you have all this, you have college applications you're thinking about, financial aid, scholarship applications. So you're very much in the moment. But you want to remember, when you compose these PIQs, pretend that you're an admissions officer and get into their brain. They are not quite as interested in the you that is now, but how that you that is now is going to be next year in college, right? So whatever it is that you're doing right now, whatever kind of person you are right now, whatever kind of activities you do right now, is that going to continue next year in college? That's what they're thinking about. How is this student going to enhance my campus community? How is the student going to be an asset and a good student that we want to have on this campus? So always be thinking from that perspective of, what is the admissions officer thinking? So you want to picture yourself in college. If you're writing about a favorite academic subject of yours, is that going to go on to be your college major, or maybe a college minor, or maybe it's related to an eventual career you could be interested in? So relate it to the future. Also, if you talk about your involvement in a club, think about it. Are you going to still join that type of club in college, or start that type of club if it doesn't exist, or lead that type of club in a leadership position in college? Also, if you write about community service, again, they want to know, what kind of person are you going to be in college? If you're doing community service now, are you the type of person who's going to continue to serve your college community, whatever town that ends up being in, when you get there? So are you going to also still do community service at the college level? Also, does your PIQ response maybe relate to how you'll interact with fellow students, staff, and professors? So if you're writing, for example, about how you overcome barriers, how you dealt with a challenge, or how you show leadership skills, will that also affect your interactions with like professors, staff at the college that you're applying to, other students, group work? So when you're doing things like studying, or a group project, a group assignment, something academic in the classroom, again, picture yourself in college. If you're talking about how you can be a great team player on your football team in high school, that's awesome. In college, where is that going to apply? You might or might not be playing football for that college, but whether you are or not, the things that you've learned, the leadership skills, the discipline, the teamwork, all of that can be applied in a lot of different situations, including academic situations. So this is some of the things that the UC PIQs are. It's a chance for students to share their voice and their story, to provide context for what's in the rest of their application. It is, in the case of the UCs, reviewed for content, not structure. That means it doesn't have to have a certain number of paragraphs. It doesn't have to have a thesis, or we sometimes call it a threesis. It's not that type of writing. So it's not being judged for grammar, spelling, style, mechanics. It is a snapshot of your life, and it is personal. They don't want it to sound like every other essay they read. They want it to be really about you and who you are. Some tips on the personal insight questions is you want to share new information. If it already says in your transcript that you got an A in APUSH, then you don't need to write that again, unless you're going into detail about maybe you're going to be a US history major or something like that. The UCs do not need specific concrete example. I mean, they do need specific concrete examples, but they don't need you to set the scene. They don't need to be in the moment with you. You don't have to have those lovely metaphors and similes that you put into your creative writing. That is awesome. It's just that the UC PIQs is not the place for creative writing. Unlike a lot of academic essays you're used to doing, you are allowed and encouraged to use I, me, mine, my. You are encouraged to use first person in these PIQs. I know you're not allowed to do that on many other types of essays, but for the UC PIQs, they love first person. They want to hear from you. And one more tip is, when you're answering a question, Remember that there's an implied question from that admissions officer that is, so what? So if you play a sport, they'll say, great, but so what? Are you going to play that sport in college, or did that sport teach you something that is going to relate to your career or your major, your life at the college campus? You play an instrument. Again, they'll think that's great, but so what? Are you going to be a music major? Are you going to continue to play that instrument because that gives you tremendous work-life balance? Maybe you love a certain academic subject, or you're a member of a club. Awesome, but so what? Are you going to continue that on? And how are you going to use that to enrich their college campus? Some things that the PIQs are not, that other college essays might be, but the UC PIQs are not this. They're not an audition. They're not an academic essay. It is not a vocabulary quiz where you have to show off your fanciest vocab and most advanced vocabulary knowledge. It's not a creative writing piece, and they do not want you to retell your life story. They're very short. They want just you to answer the prompt and focus just on one specific topic. Some other things that you should avoid in the UC PIQs. One thing is acronyms. At your school, you might have CSF or ASB or AVID, but if you don't know that AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination, they might not know either. So the first time before you use an acronym, you might want to spell it out and explain. If you say, I'm in CSF, you can put in parentheses, California Scholarship Federation, and then after that, you can just say CSF. Or if you say, I'm in AVID, in parentheses, Advancement via Individual Determination, and then after that, put AVID. Also, this is not an essay. It does not need a title. You do not need to have quotes or dialogue. You don't need a hook in the beginning. It doesn't need to set a scene. It doesn't need flowery language. You want to be cautious when humor is okay, but be a little bit careful when you're choosing jokes or sarcasm, because you don't know if it matches the humor of the person that might be reading this. Be aware that if you're writing about someone else, for example, someone that inspires you, this is what I hear from admissions officers all the time. They'll get an essay from someone who writes this beautiful essay about how their mother is a huge inspiration in their life. And they'll think, that's beautiful, that's awesome, but I'm not deciding whether to let their mother into college. I'm deciding whether to let them into college. So I want to hear about them. If you have an awesome person in your life that you look up to, then don't just write about them, write about how has your behavior changed because of them? What kind of person are you? What kind of activities do you do because of that person that inspires you? So make sure to keep it about you. Sometimes people, there are two prompts number 4 and 5, that are both about the possibility of writing about challenges or barriers. And sometimes students are hesitant that it's going to sound like they are complaining or having a sob story or a pity party. And so what I say to that is that, yes, don't complain, but do explain. If you had a situation in your life that affected your academics, that you are overcoming or that you overcame, explain it, explain the context of that, how it affected you and how you grew. Maybe you became that person with grit and resilience and determination, and you didn't let something like a mental health challenge or online school during the pandemic or whatever it was, keep you down. You had to learn to deal with it and get over it. And now you have these coping skills. So for the rest of your life, like in college, when you encounter challenges, you'll still be able to deal with them. So it's okay to talk about challenges. It's okay to talk about hardships, but I like to say, explain, don't complain. And another tip is to be authentic rather than strategic. So they can tell when it's not you speaking from your heart, so to speak. They read a lot of these and they get really savvy about who's writing what they think someone wants to hear versus who's sharing about themselves truly. So be authentic in these, be yourself. So there will be 8 prompts. You can answer any 4. Again, this is just for the UC applications. The word limit is 350 words. That's your limit. You do not have a minimum, I believe, but you do have that as a maximum. You want to choose the 4 that best showcase who you are, and all the questions are given equal consideration. So there's no advantage or disadvantage to choosing prompt 1 or prompt 8 or prompt 4. It's up to you which 4 best show who you are. I'll give you an example of a contrast. There's one prompt that's about leadership, and there's one that's about creativity. Maybe some people are like, wow, I do have leadership qualities. I am a leader in my family or at my shift at work or at school or in this club or sport or band or whatever. And they can write about that, but they don't feel as creative. Whereas somebody else might say, I'm kind of shy. I'm a little bit of an introvert. I don't really have a lot of leadership experience. Well, maybe that's not the prompt for you, but maybe you are creative. Maybe you draw, maybe you write, maybe you compose poetry, maybe you dance, maybe you perform. So think about the fact that you have 8 to choose from and you only do the 4 that really show best who you are. I do recommend composing these first to keep it in some place like a Canvas classroom, a Google Doc, something like that, so that you're not actually typing it into the real UC application. You are saving it, looking at it, having people review it beforehand. Then when it's ready, October 1st, when the application is actually can be submitted is the earliest, between October 1 and November 30th. That's when you can paste it into, the response, and you don't have to be composing it on the application website live. Also, please know that it's going to write or paste in plain text, which means you can't have a specific font type, font size, an image, an emoji, a special character. None of that will paste. It will only paste in plain text. So when they read these, everyone's looks exactly the same as far as font type, font size, no special links or images or anything like that. As far as how important is grammar, I can't say it's unimportant because they want to be able to read it so that it doesn't interfere with their understanding of your writing. If your writing is grammatically so terrible that they can't understand it, that is an issue. However, it's not one of the rubric points. It's not one of the things they're scoring or grading you on. They are not looking at this for mechanics, spelling, grammar, or style, or what vocabulary you're using. They are looking at it for the content. You'll also notice that there's an additional comments section. And let me explain what this is. First of all, additional comments are not required. They ask you, don't fill this out unless you truly need to. Some people think, ooh, I really don't want to narrow it down to 4 essays. I'd love to submit 5. Additional comments will kind of let me submit a 5th. That's not what it's for. They don't want a 5th prompt answered there. What it is for information that is not found elsewhere on the application, especially if it explains a gap or deficiency. So say, for example, you look at your high school transcript and there's a certain semester where your grades were not as great. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it was the pandemic. Maybe you were adjusting to online schooling. Maybe you were dealing with a mental health issue, a problem in your family, a learning disability. Sometimes students are dealing with something like housing insecurity or food insecurity, a death in the family. If there's something that affected you during a time that you feel like you need to explain that, that's what the additional comment section is for. So again, it is optional. But if you feel like there's something I need to explain or I want to explain, I want to make sure to put it in there. Okay, so just know that that is available to you. Okay, so we're going to now get right into the 8 prompts. And for each one, I will read the prompt and then I'll give you some ideas for if I'm a 12th grader, how do I start thinking about this for myself? So this is UC Personal Insight question number 1. Describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. So think to yourself, if I'm a 12th grader, was there a time when I stepped up and took the role of leader, maybe in a group, like in a school group, maybe on a team, like an academic or a cheer team, maybe in my family, maybe in a work setting, I have to be shift leader sometimes or show leadership skills at my job. Briefly describe that experience and then explore what that experience meant to you. So be able to reflect on it. What did you learn? How did you grow? What, if any, impact did that have in other places in your life? And be aware that, again, this is not a typical academic essay. You don't need a hook. You don't need to start out with Webster's dictionary defines leadership as. They don't need you to define leadership. They need to give you to give examples of when you were a leader. I'll just briefly pause and see if there's any questions on this one. Tessa, anything I need to address?
There's one good one. I know UC doesn't look at SAT scores, but what if I just conveniently mention mine on my PIQ?
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. I love that one. Okay, because I used to do a ton of SAT prep. That was part of my job for Cal Soap, so I'm really familiar with the SAT. In the last couple of years, because of the pandemic, the UCs have gone test blind, not just test optional, but test blind. In other words, they're not going to consider it as part of the admissions process. I would say it's going to be, in their view and the view of a reader, it's going to be a neutral factor. It's not going to be positive or negative necessarily, unless the one exception would be, I don't think they want to see an actual number score. But if you were explaining something like, for example, my GPA wasn't the best, so I went ahead and took the SAT so that I could prove, my ability, my academic ability, even as it did not relate to directly to my GPA. And I did really well. You could say something like, I was really happy with my score and I submitted it to the colleges that are, test optional or test required. But I don't think they want an actual number because they're not allowed to use it. So if you were to share the number of whatever your SAT score is, I would say it would be a neutral factor for an admissions officers. It wouldn't help or hurt your essay. Good question. All right. Quick write number, I'm sorry, UC PIQ number 2, and then we'll get to the quick write ideas. Every person has a creative side and it can be expressed in many ways: problem solving, original and innovative thinking, and artistically, to name a few. Describe how you express your creative side. So give an example of your creativity. You saying I'm a creative person, or I'm always doing this, or sometimes people will say like, I'm always drawing, but give a specific example of what do you draw. Don't limit yourself by conventional definitions. Remember that this could also apply to problem solving. Was there ever a problem where your imagination and intuition guided you to the solution? What was the problem? How did you arrive at a solution? And what was the outcome? Maybe there was a dispute or a fight amongst your friends or your classmates, and maybe you figured out a way to resolve it creatively. Also, you might have a creative passion. Like I said, sometimes people like play an instrument, they have a performing art that they do, they have music, they have there's all kinds of visual and performing arts. What have you gained from that passion? Has it affected other parts of your life? Has it affected those around you? How has it helped you in many different ways? Sometimes people are surprised at the connection, for example, between music and math, or between artistic expression and mental health coping. So you can really get creative with that one, pun intended. All right, moving on to number 3, PIQ number 3. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? I think what students have a difficult time with in this one is they often have a hard time narrowing it down to one. They think, well, I have a lot of different skills, like you might have social skills, you might have spatial skills, you might have a skill in a foreign language, you might be good at relating to people, you might be excellent in science. There's like a million things you could have. They're not saying what are your greatest talents, plural, and skills, plural. They're asking you to try to focus on one. So keep that in mind. You might want to start with a list of a few, and then think to yourself, which one of these talents or skills is the most meaningful or important to me and why? Does this talent come naturally? And or have you worked hard to develop this talent or skill? One thing I would warn about this one is admissions officers specifically say, you may have always had this talent or skill, but focus it on present or recent past, like in other words, high school years. So if you say that you have this natural talent for spelling, but then the example you give is the spelling bee that you won in first grade, they're kind of like, okay, that was first grade. Is there anything in the last couple of years maybe that you can point to? So try to keep it like when you're giving examples, try to make sure that it includes some examples from recent years, like high school years. Tessa, any questions on this one?
There's one that just popped up. Would I be able to talk about the same thing for 2 PIQs, but relate it to the prompt? For example, I'm in band, so would I be able to use that extracurricular for creativity and for leadership?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, especially if it's really important to you and you're really passionate about it, then yes, you can do that. I wouldn't say use the same thing to write about for all 4, But yes, you can write about it for 2 different prompts. It's a good question. All right, UC PIQ number 4. Describe how you have taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or work to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. So an example of taking advantage of an educational opportunity is maybe you had an internship, maybe you had a summer job that related to, your future intended career. Maybe you decided to apply to a program, like we have a program, SWAG, Students with Academic Goals. Maybe you were in SWAG. Maybe you went to the CalSoap College Fair. Maybe you decided to take AVID class as your elective. Maybe you were in a program like Upward Bound or, TRIO, Educational Talent Search. So if there's something like that that you have taken advantage of, you could write about that. Or in some cases, you might have experienced a barrier, something that affected your academics that you worked to overcome. So some things to think about for this one. Think about this, either this opportunity or this barrier. You could write about either one, and remember that you could have one or the other, or both or not both, and that's all okay. They're not judging you on what kind of life you've had, but if you choose to answer this one, you do need to choose the one opportunity or a barrier. For the opportunity, it could be something like, are you engaged in educational or mentorship programs, community-based organizations that are opportunities? And what have you gained from these experiences? Maybe you have to supplement your coursework, like with an online course or a community college course you took if you took a community college or an AP course in high school. Maybe you're in a magnet academy or have a special curriculum at your school. And if it's a barrier, it could be something like a learning challenge or a learning disability. It could have been a difficult time you're going through. It could have been a mental block you had, or a teacher that you really struggled with to do well in their class or something like that. So again, you're not talking just about the barrier or the challenge, but how did you overcome it if you choose to do this one? I'm going to go to number 5, which 4 and 5 are kind of related. They're somewhat similar. Sometimes people choose to do one and not the other because they feel they're too similar, but it depends. Everybody has different life experience. So number 5 is describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic environment? So most of us, when we are going through something in life, if we're in school at the same time, it almost always affects school, right? So if I'm going through a difficult time personally, maybe it's difficult financial time, maybe it is a difficult family time, whatever it might be, probably things are going to be affected, like my attendance at school, my ability to pay attention at school, my grades in school. So we know that you're like a whole person, and there's lots of different kinds of things that could affect your academic achievement. So if there is something that has affected you that you've dealt with, you could choose number 5. And here's some things to think about. Have you had a difficult experience in your life? How did you get through it? And what did you learn going through this experience? Some of you might have encountered very difficult things at a very young age, and it is okay to talk about them or write about them if they affect you to this day. But remember, they really want to focus on something that maybe affected your high school academics or your high school achievement. If you're currently working your way through a challenge, what are you doing now? And does that affect different aspects of your life? Maybe you take time for self-care. Maybe you had to get organized and start using a Google Calendar. Maybe you ask questions more or have a tutor or help somebody by tutoring somebody else. But what are you actually doing to work on this challenge? Ask yourself, how did this challenge impact my ability to be a good student? Because what do they want to know? Do they want someone that goes to college and then is going to face difficult classes or a difficult time and just quit? They don't want you to quit. They want you to succeed at their college. And so they want to hear, not that you had no challenges in life necessarily, but if you did have one, how did you work through that? Has that now become a part of you so that you know, hey, if I have a similar challenge in college, I feel confident myself that I'll be able to figure it out. I'm going to ask for help this time, or I'm going to know these tips this time. So it's really good for them to see that if you have challenges, you don't have to have one, and you don't have to answer number 5 at all. But if you do, it's not as much about the challenge as how did you overcome it? What skills did you gain from that? Tessa, are there any questions about prompt 4 or 5 that I should address?
We're good right now, Carla. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Number 6, think about an academic subject that inspires you. Describe how you have furthered this interest inside and or outside of the classroom. So if you just have, if you like your favorite class in the world is Spanish, your favorite class in the world is math, your favorite class in the world is physics, whatever it is, if you want to write about that academic subject that inspires you, this is your chance to do it. So maybe you have a passion for something that you feel like you just can't get enough of. You look forward to this class. You actually don't mind doing the homework for this class. And does this academic interest relate to activities or interests you have outside the classroom? Like, for example, are you interested in physics because you're in a robotics club? Or are you interested in STEM because you do coding or gaming? Might the academic area tie in some way to your major or career path? And if so, how and why is that important to you? What sparks your desire to learn? Now, this could be a core subject, like they say, you know, math, English, science, history, but it could be an elective, right? It could be auto shop, it could be ceramics, it could be whatever it is that is it a subject you're taking at school or that you've taken at a community college, something like that. But what is that subject? Again, it can be an elective. It does not have to be a typical core class. All right. Number 7, what have you done to make your school or your community a better place? So this one is about service, community service. Maybe you saw a problem and then you were motivated to act. What did you learn from your effort? Maybe you saw that someone was being bullied. Maybe you saw that a lot of people around you had some kind of issue. Was there something that you did to address it, right? And maybe you found out that a lot of people at your school did not know where their next meal was coming from and you didn't realize this was a problem and you had a food drive. Or maybe you realized it because you were going through that and you started a food drive at your school. But if there was a problem and you tried to figure out a solution, I saw one really cool one, something that happened during the pandemic that when the pandemic first started and everything that you could do, like take a COVID test or get, you know, sign up to have a COVID vaccine, it was all online. And for a lot of senior citizens and older people, it was a real challenge. So there was a high school student that was like, hey, I'm online all day. I'm not bad at it, you know? And so he actually started kind of a club where he would get his high school friends to help these senior citizens to be able to go online and do things like get a COVID test or get a COVID vaccine because they weren't able to navigate the online system. So if you have a story like that, it can be very small or it can be large. It doesn't matter the scope as much as what was your passion for it. Maybe you contributed to a positive change at your school or in your neighborhood, or in your community, or in the world at large. What steps have you taken to accomplish this? If you worked in a group, make sure that it's fine to say what the group did, but focus on your tasks. What was your part of the project? What was your role? What were your responsibilities? Also remember for this one that even small changes can have a big impact. So if you decided to have a random act of kindness a day, or give a compliment to one person every day, a different person, or hold the door. I know these things sound tiny, but if it's something that came from your heart, that's what they want to know is like, what is important to you? However, they're not going to be able to do something like click on a link to see like your project or a website or anything like that. So you're going to have to describe it. This is something where you can't have an image or a link there. Any questions about the service question? Okay. And finally, number 8, this is the open-ended one. Beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you stand out as a strong candidate for admissions to the University of California? So this is if you feel like I have seen all these prompts, but there's still something about myself that I haven't got a chance to share, this is your chance. So maybe look at your transcript, or if you have a resume, or even reflect or think about what is your daily routine? What do you do every day in the hours that you're awake? Is there anything that you would need to clarify or explain or elaborate on that readers would not find in another PIQ response? Maybe is there something that UC did not ask on the application that reflects who you are as a student, either inside or outside of the classroom? And again, UCs typically don't ask you for things like a letter of recommendation or a resume or anything like that, unless you're applying to a very specific program, and then they'll let you know after you apply what's required. But so they're not going to be looking at that type of information. But if you want to take your 350 words and write about what have you not been able to write about yet, this is your chance to do it. So it's a very open-ended question. Generally, people either love this prompt or they really dislike it. If you really dislike it, it's because there's no structure and guidance on what to do. If you like it, it's because you want to get creative, or you're like, wait, there's this one thing I didn't get to talk about that I really want to discuss. Any questions thus far?
We're good, Carla. Sorry, I've been typing.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's good. All right. So again, we will be sharing this slide deck on the calsoapsandiego.org website, and you'll be able to see all 8 of the prompts. Here's the first 4. Here's 5, 6, 7, and 8. I should mention, by the way, that these are the ones for 12th graders that are applying to be a college freshman at a UC. They are not different for the different UCs. They're the same for all 9 undergraduate campuses you can apply to. If you're entering in a couple of years as a transfer student, they're going to be slightly different prompts, but they do still have PIQs. A couple final tips on the UCs is write these early, do them now. You can actually start creating these now. If you even want to start with thinking about all 8, but eventually narrow to the 4 that best show who you are. Yes, it's okay to somewhat recycle essays here and there, but you want to make sure it's obviously not like, oh, I just took my Common App essay that was 700 words and I cut it to half of that and made it 350 words. And so now it's my PIQ. Make sure that it does actually answer the UC personal insight question prompt. Remember what is relevant to your experience and your individual circumstances. And remember that UCs don't want creative writing, although other universities might. So here's an example of something that is a bit of a hazy description. And this is not because they want creative writing, but they do want concrete specific details. So if you said, my dad worked hard, so I want to be a good student, okay, that's okay. But what is that? What does working hard mean? And what does it mean to this person to be a good student? So if they said something like, growing up, I watched my dad work 2 full-time jobs to save money so I could go to college, which motivated me to attend after-school tutoring 4 times a week to maintain an exceptional GPA. Well, now you've talked about tutoring, you've talked about your GPA, you've explained what your dad did as far as a sacrifice. So those are details. It's not necessarily creative writing, but it does give that concrete detail that the UC officers would like to see. You can also reach out to a friend. I'm sure you probably have other 12th graders that are going through this as well. And it's good to read each other's essays. I know sometimes it's a little bit personal and you don't have to share anything with them that you don't want to or you don't feel comfortable sharing. But sometimes it's good to just review their essay. How did the essay make you feel? Did it provide new information that wasn't in the transcript? Did it flow? If you were the admissions officer, would you admit this student? Right? Because remember, for a lot of these, their admit rate is not 100%. At some universities, it depends on the college, but at some universities, they have, they might only be able to accept 30% or 50 or 60% of those who apply. So this is one of those factors in your application, besides everything else, that can make a difference. So I'm going to give you some case studies. I have a lot more than we can ever actually get through this evening, but they will be available in the slideshow. I want to be able to get to the Common App as well, but just so you can see, like, what does an actual PIQ response look like? This is an actual student response from a few years ago, but this way you can see what a student responded, and then the ones that we chose for this slideshow, I specifically chose ones that weren't amazingly good or amazingly bad. Like, it wasn't obvious when you read them, oh, this is definitely added value, or, oh, they've missed an opportunity here. It's like they're kind of right in the middle. It could go either way. So I wanted to be able to show you an example of that subtle difference and how you could make something a little weaker or stronger. So this person responded to the leadership question. And here is, I'm going to go ahead and read the essay out loud, and then you can think about it. And then I'll tell you if a UC admissions officer would say this added value or no, they missed an opportunity here. Okay. During the summer of this year, senior year, I applied for summer staff, a position that our school offered to seniors to help freshmen transition from middle school to high school. I realized that being a leader wasn't as easy as it sounded. My time with a freshman made me realize who I am and who I want to become. Everything that I thought would go wrong went wrong. I had to understand these freshmen were in a completely new environment that they had to adapt to. Over the next few hours, I gathered all my thoughts and tried to recall what my experience as a freshman was like and relate it back to the current situation. Now I have a better understanding of where everyone is coming from. I figured that stubbornness played a big role in their attitude, so I shared my experiences of being a freshman, which got the freshman students to understand the importance of the event. This experience helped me realize that leaders have to be patient in order to get their points across. Now, what you have to remember is if you're an admissions officer, you're not judging this person. You're not saying I like them or I don't like them, right? Or they have good experience or not good experience. You're just saying, did they answer the prompt? Did this add value or did they miss an opportunity to go deeper? So in this case, we'll see what a UC admissions officer would say about this particular answer. They would say that this is a missed opportunity. It's not bad, it's a good start, but they did miss an opportunity to go deeper. They could explain what their idea of leadership is. The only actual attribute they say that they had to use was patience, that you had to be patient to be a leader, but they didn't give examples of that, and they didn't say other things that they thought were part of their leadership skills. They also could have provided more details on the role. They talk about this event, but they don't really say like, how long was the event and what was their job in the event? Did they have to give the freshmen like a tour of the campus, or were they supposed to tell them about what to expect academically, or like, we don't really know what their role was. Also, it says there's a sentence that says everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Well, what was it? I mean, they only had, let's see, 180 words and they could have had up to 350. So they could have explained everything I thought would go wrong went wrong. Well, what went wrong and what did you do about it, right? And then if they found a solution on how to fix or how to deal with whatever went wrong, that would have been better. So it's not bad. It's not bad, but they could have really gone deeper and explained things in more detail. So in this case, they would say it's a missed opportunity. Any questions on this one at all, Tessa?
We are good right now. Oh, also there's one. Are these PIQ questions the same for transfer students on the upcoming UC application?
No, transfer students will have a slightly different one. And Tessa, I don't know if you can drop that UC application link in the chat. But that application, depending if you click on transfer or freshman, if you click on transfer, it'll take you to the requirements, including the PIQs that are specifically for transfers, because they are slightly different than the ones for freshmen. All right. So I'm going to skip, you'll see that there are many others of these in here though. So you can look at lots of other student example essays and see what adds value, what wasn't good for the UC. You'll have a chance to see those. But I do want to get into what about other universities? So what if you're applying to not a UC, or maybe yes, a UC, but also other universities as well? I want to mention the Common App. So the Common Application, or called the Common App, it serves as a single application that is actually used by over 900 colleges. That includes every Ivy League school uses the Common App, and a lot of elite universities like Stanford, Caltech, University of Chicago, public or private, a lot of them use this Common App. So it allows you to enter information like your name, demographics, activities, and instead of doing it differently every time for each single school, it's the same one, and then you just kind of check a box, which universities do I want to send this to? Of course, there is a fee per university, so you can't go crazy and apply to 200 unless you're super rich, but it does allow you to check which universities or choose which universities you want to send it to. And in the Common App, you're going to see an essay portion where there's 7 prompts, and the students can choose any one prompt. And your response should be 250 to 650 words. It does allow you to upload your essay from Google Drive. So if you're keeping it in Google, it just is a really easy upload. How are the Common App essays different from the UC PIQs? So it's a different beast, okay? The Common App is an actual essay, a more traditional essay. It should probably have paragraphs. It could be creative writing, or it could have a thesis and 3 prongs. Whereas the UC PIQs are more like answering questions that you would answer in a conversation. The Common App is an actual essay. Also, although it does not have to be creative writing, it can be creative writing in the Common App, whereas in the PIQ, that's not what they're looking for. In the Common App, you only submit one essay that's between 250 and 650 words. And remember, on the UC PIQs, you're going to ultimately submit 4 350-word responses. So those are some of the differences between the two. Also, when they're talking about the Common App personal statement, that's basically the Common App essay. And that's the major one that everybody who fills out the Common App has to do. However, I should let you know that sometimes there are certain schools, certain colleges that can choose to have you write a secondary or a supplemental essay on top of the Common App. So it basically takes you to a page where if you say, I want to apply to MIT, if MIT, besides their one personal statement, also wants you to have a question that's specifically from MIT, they'll let you know on the Common App so that you can provide a supplemental essay to that college. But the personal statement is the one that anyone who does the Common App has to do that one. But then there are some specific universities that might require a secondary essay, and they'll let you know once you choose that, that college. So these are the 7 prompts. Again, I'm not going to go into the different quick write ideas. I'm just going to briefly go over them. And I've tried to highlight the idea for all 7 of them so you know the main idea. So number 1, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful that they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So if there's something in who you are, your background, your identity, and interest that you have, or a talent that you have, if that's what you want to write about, that number 1 is for you. Number 2, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So remember that writing about the challenge, setback, or failure is only maybe the first part of your essay. Most of it's going to be like, how did it affect you? What did you learn? How did you grow? Okay. Number 3, reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking, and what was the outcome? Number 4, they did change in the last couple of years. It used to be a question about a challenge, a dilemma, or a problem you solved, but they changed that to be about gratitude. So now number 4 says, reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? I don't know if they changed it maybe because of the pandemic and a different kind of attitude, but they changed it to be about gratitude. And number 5, 6, and 7. Number 5, you could discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself and others. Number 6, describe a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? What or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? Share an essay, and then number 7, share an essay on any topic of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design, one of your own creation. So those are the 7 choices. You choose one, any one that you want, and that essay, it should probably be longer. Like, I know they say it's 250 to 650, but it should be closer to 650 words. All right. Before I go into kind of more questions that might possibly be there, Tessa, are there any questions on these Common App essay prompts?
There is one that says, should the personal statement include grades and achievements, or should it be more of a story that defines you?
Excellent question. And it's the latter of those 2. They already are going to be able to see a list of your activities in your application. They're already going to be able to see your transcript and your grades. So this is more like a story that is something about who are you really? What is important to you? What are you passionate about, or what has defined you? So this is less about listing your grades, your activities, your honors, your awards. And this is the place to tell a story about yourself, really. So it can be creative writing if that's you. If that's not you, that's okay as well, right? But it should actually have paragraphs. It should actually have topic sentences. If you are going to do an academic essay for the Common App. If you're going to do creative writing, that's totally okay as well. You want to do what expresses you. So you have kind of more freedom here, but you are only narrowing it to 1. Whereas on the UCs, you're going to answer at least 4. The Common App, you're sticking to 1. So you really have to choose like, what is most important about me? Like, what do I really want to express about myself? Anything else?
There is one, do these common apps have fees? If so, can they be waived?
Yeah, okay, good. Actually, let's talk a little bit about application fees. Just a reminder, starting tomorrow at calsoapsandiego.org, the slide deck will be there and also this webinar. But let me stop share for a second so I can talk about application fees. So almost every college that you apply to is going to have a fee just to apply to them. The exception would be community colleges. If you're applying to a California community college, like say you want to apply to Mesa, City, Miramar, Southwestern, Grossmont, Cuyamaca, Maricosta, Palomar, Imperial Valley College, those applications are free. So the community college has a free application, which is awesome. Most universities, whether they're public or private, there is a fee per campus. For example, and the average is probably about $70 per college. It might range somewhere between like $55 to $85 per college. I will kind of explain the fee structure a little bit. So for the UC PIQ, for the UC application, there's a section in the application where you're entering the number of people in your family and your family income. Based on that, they'll let you know by the end of the application whether you qualify for a fee waiver or not. If you don't, then you will have to pay the fee per campus that you send to. If you do qualify for a fee waiver, that means you can apply for up to 4 campuses for free. Now, if you wanted to apply to 5 or 6 or 7, you can still do that, but you're going to have to pay for those, the 5th, 6th, 7th, etc. So they will cover your application fee up to 4. The CSU does the same thing. There are 23 CSUs in California, and on the application, there's a part where you enter the number in your family and your family income, and they will let you know by the end of the application, this means you qualify for a fee waiver or you do not. By the way, on most of these applications, especially if it's coming close to the deadline and you are like, I know I really need a fee waiver, but I didn't qualify for one. There's usually an option that says something along the lines of bill me later, so that you can submit your application on time. And then at a later time, sometimes you can do something like get a College Board fee waiver or get a letter from a counselor or something that will let them waive the fees after the fact so that you can actually hit submit. So that's something to keep in mind. The Common App, there is also a fee per campus that you apply to. So even though you could apply to 900 colleges if you wanted to, again, there's going to be a fee per college, and it's usually around $70 per college. So keep that in mind that, you know, you want to be selective. And if you don't qualify for a fee waiver, then you're going to want to be prepared for that eventuality. Other questions?
Yes, this is a slight topic change, but I know this is a good question. For question number 6, can the topic be as simple as romance / the idea of having a soulmate and being able to love someone more than yourself?
Was, just to clarify, would this be number 6 on the Common App essay prompts or the UC PIQ?
It's not specified in the question. Maybe we'll get another clarification.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So number 6 is the academic subject. So maybe they're talking about the Common App.
Yes, that makes more sense.
Oh, a topic, idea, or concept you find so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. To be honest, what they're probably looking for here is something that might relate to your future major. So for example, if you were going to study psychology or something that relates to, you know, whether that's romance or whatever, if it's something where it has an academic tie-in, then yes, especially if it ties into what you're going to study in college, then yes, I would say that is okay. However, just to talk about romance as a concept, if you're going to go on and be a, you know, biology major, I don't know that I would see the point of doing that. They're probably looking for something that ties into what you're going to study in college. So if you can tie it into your studies, that would be okay. Other questions?
Sorry, Carla, I'm just reading through all of them.
Yeah, no, take your time.
Is the family income from 2020? Yes.
So right now at this point, the family income that they would look at is from 2020. Oh, wait. Yes, 2020. However, if the income changed, like in 2021, and a lot of times with the pandemic, there were changes, What happens is in the spring, when you do your taxes for 2022, you can update that, and you can also contact the college's financial aid office to explain recent changes in income. Is that right? Is it 2020 or 2021 that we're looking at?
I believe it's
2021.
Why is this always so hard to remember?
I know, because it's like the prior year, but
Yes.
I believe if you've done your 2021, if you filed your 2021 taxes, then yes, you could use that information from 2021. If not, then you have to use 2020 information until you update it.
It looks like we have a comment that says, I believe it's 2021. I can look behind to confirm and post it in the chat.
Yeah, I think it is for this year. Of course, it changes every year, but I think for this year it is 2021. But you can update that afterwards, after you do your 2022 taxes.
Okay, another one. Does UCSD have good merit-based financial aid? If so, do I have to apply for it separately, or do I automatically get considered?
Good question. Yes, UCSD has all kinds of aid. Some of it is merit-based, some of it is need-based, some of it is a combination of both. They'll sometimes have scholarships from donors, from alums, from certain departments on campus. It's really nice though, the application, when you actually fill out the UC application, it's also in essence, it's not filling out the FAFSA for you. You have to do that on your own, but it does put you in the, like you are entering some of the information. It'll say like, do you want to be considered for, say, for example, UCSD scholarships if you've checked UCSD. It'll also ask you to rank the UC colleges in an order first to last preference. So you're automatically kind of getting put into their financial aid system for possible scholarships. And those scholarships can be competitive, but luckily most of them don't have a supplemental application. If they do, if they are considering you for it and they want some kind of supplemental information about it, they'll contact you. But part of the actual UC application, college application, is putting you in the running for certain scholarships on the campus that you might apply, that you might be eligible for. And they'll let you know if you receive it automatically, or they'll let you know if there's information they're going to request from you to see if you would qualify for it.
All right, another financial aid question. Are English proficiency tests a factor in financial aid / are English proficiency tests important in general?
No, they're not a factor in financial aid. And it depends on your situation, because, for example, if you are an international student, sometimes they do require you to take something like the TOEFL or something that it's basically, that's a requirement of admissions. If you are something, if you have not been in the US or going to school in the US, for example, for the last 3 years, they might require something like that. However, it is something where if they want to admit you based on your merit, they're going to admit you. And if you haven't passed or gotten a certain score on an English proficiency test, that's not going to prohibit you from actually enrolling in the university. However, if it's something like you don't pass the analytical writing placement exam, something like that, they might make you take some kind of special classes, and that at a certain point you have to pass that proficiency in order to remain in college, but they will let you start. So it depends on your situation. Usually those tests are for international students.
All right, and another good question. Should I submit my AP scores to the universities even if they were all 3s?
Yes, you should. And the reason well, you can actually go, if you want, you can Google like which universities give college credit for which scores, but some applications even tell you you have to submit them like that. If you took an AP test, you have to submit the score. So yes, there are some universities and some colleges that will give you college credit for a 3. For some, they only give it for a 4 or a 5, but regardless of whether or not they're going to be giving you college credit for it, it's good that they see that you took it. And it's not, if that is not part, it's usually something that can only help your application and not hurt it. So a low score wouldn't necessarily hurt you, but a strong score could help you. So I would say, yes, a 3 will give you college credit at some colleges, many colleges. And so I would go ahead and submit those scores. And it looks like we're kind of running to the end of our time. So I put my email address in the chat. It is kkwhitaker@ucsd.edu. Again, we'll be posting this on our calsoapsandiego.org website. And I am going to go ahead and finish right on time and not keep people over. And I want to have a big thank you to Tessa, who actually just graduated from UC San Diego, for helping with the Q&A. And thank you everybody for attending. So have a wonderful rest of your night, and we hope to see you at future events. Yes. Bye-bye.